Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. The impact of the war involving Iran continues to widen, raising concerns about regional stability, global supply chains, and even Western weapons stockpiles. With the United States expending large amounts of munitions, allies are questioning what this could mean for security commitments worldwide. Well, to explore this topic, we are joined by James Bowden. He's an expert on the Arab, Middle East and Near East observers. James, welcome and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for the invitation.
Pleasure. So how would you characterize the situation in Iran at the moment?
Well, right now we continue to see a well-executed operation. This is probably as good an operation as anybody would ask for in terms of operational smoothness. There's not been anything that has been too outside the norm that the United States has had to pivot to address. There were some level of concern about the Strait of Hormuz and also missiles falling on our allies in the region. So all of those things so far have followed normal expected retaliation forms. And also we can look at the low body count. It is very sad that we have lost 6 soldiers in the course of this campaign, and Near East Observers mourns for them. But also at the same time, it is just a phenomenal demonstration of U.S. power and force integration that we can have a lot of our service members protected during this type of operation without many more losses.
Right. Okay. Well, you mentioned losses amongst other things. What is the situation in terms of losses inside Iran? Of course, the Iranian government is saying that hundreds of civilians have been killed by the strikes and so on. And well, it's up to you whether you want to believe them or not, based on their credibility. But in terms of the power structures that exist, how would you describe the effect on those power structures of these strikes?
Well, right now it does seem that we may be at that critical moment. I definitely believe that a second or third week is necessary. The Iranian government is built on a 2-track system. You have the Pasdaran, which is a regular army, and you have the secular government. And then you have the IRGC, which basically supports the religious government. And those are united at the top through the supreme leader. And so what the governments of Israel and the United States have been seeking to do, and apparently have so far been accomplishing to some success, is undermining a large number of individual and isolated units. Think about a Jenga game that you want to win, and where you reverse the strategy and you're trying to knock out certain pieces. And so far, we've been knocking out a little piece here and a little piece there. And we just need to keep knocking away at certain points in order to bring the whole thing down. So as I described during the last crisis, and some people were having some discussion, I said, this is going to be a long-term campaign. And what we may see are fractures and signs of its collapse. And then it's going to be like an avalanche. It'll just kind of start slow and then rapidly accelerate. So I do believe that the strategy that is being pursued is getting to that point, but we do need about another week or so in order to really bring the whole card house down.
Well, while that is all happening, James, Iran is firing missiles at the Arab countries around it, including at civilian targets, for example, in Dubai. What is the response of the Arab countries been, and could this explode across the region?
Well, I really don't think so. And I think that there tends to be a little sensationalism and hyping of that angle. So far through the last, if you want to put it in this way, Iran War 1 and now into Iran War 2, what we have seen is a considerable amount of restraint on the part of the Arab governments. So far, the only additional Arab government to get involved in this fight in a direct manner is the United Arab Emirates, which hit a desalination plant on the Iranian side. So far, we've seen, as I said, a remarkable amount of restraint, a very welcome amount of restraint. I think that many of those governments, since we are aligned with them, we have that good relationship and are able to assure them that there's not really much that they can contribute at this point. And I think that that's good. There are a lot of there are a lot of Israeli resources being committed. And the whole strategy of Iran is to bring in additional forces and create confusion, create chaos. I mean, the United States is working with Israel with what we call deconfliction. We have representatives from both sides in both capitals and at places like US CENTCOM, working with commanders to ensure that flights don't crash into each other or that ordnance that is fired is duplicated. So there's a lot of good command and control. And I think that, as I just said, the Arab countries recognize that that is a factor here. Also, nations like Iraq, they have been depending on the PMF forces for their greater national security. I mean, they have turned them into their de facto military. And so with the elimination of the PMF forces, Iraq really has no military for which it can use to respond. And that is going to be a critical issue in the near future when they have to suddenly develop their own army once again. Also, we have allies like Kuwait who are operating and supporting United States operations and are doing so in a very meaningful and capable way according to their strengths and capabilities.
Okay, now you talk about the operations continuing for at least another week until things start to actually crack in Iran, but there's a lot of ordnance being used to get to that stage. This has raised some concerns amongst especially European countries and other countries with whom, who have entered into contracts for the purchase of munitions from the United States. And they're thinking, well, hang on, if America's going to use all of these on Iran, then it won't have enough to fulfill these contracts. What do you say to that fear?
I think it's very legitimate. There was a lot of indications that the reason why the United States did not continue to pursue bombing campaigns in Yemen against Ansar Allah last year was that we were running low on munitions at that time. The Biden administration had sent out massive quantities of arms to the Ukrainians, leaving us very low on our stockpiles. And let's be honest, I mean, research has shown that the United States is down to maybe 2 or 3 ordnance producing factories here domestically. And so, yes, it's very concerning. Even the Taiwanese are a little bit concerned because we are stretched so thin with these commitments that there is the possibility that we would not be in a good position to defend them if China decided to take on Taiwan at this moment. And so I think our national leaders have a lot to be accountable for and to consider as far as how much they are risking and gambling with China or even Russia not getting involved at some stage.
Right. Well, certainly, and one hopes that any shortfalls are quickly made up. Now, there have been rumours in recent days that Russia is supporting Iran with the provision of intelligence to help its attack decisions against US assets and Israeli assets. Does that move the needle at all, the fact that Russia is getting involved in this way?
I really don't think so. I mean, I think I would have been more surprised if somebody said there was a sun in the sky. Of course, Russia is helping with intelligence with Iran. I mean, they have been very close all throughout the course of the Ukraine war, and Iran has been supplying Russia with all types of munitions. They have had a very close semiotic relationship. And so, yeah, that's why you haven't seen a lot of big reactions in any of the governments concerned, like the United States or Israel. We know that's going on. And likely, I would even assume that maybe even the Chinese are giving a tiny assist right now. So I don't think that it really weighs substantially because, let's be honest, I mean, even consumer commercial intelligence satellites are now at such a high quality that you can plan for military operations using just what's available on the internet. And that's so sophisticated that Israel has a law and has restrictions on those commercial satellite organizations that tell them they cannot zoom in to a certain level of scale because of the fear that these commercial satellites, forget national intelligence satellites, will be used against them for planning purposes.
Right, so apart from the sharing of intelligence, James, are there any other ways in which the relationship between Russia and Iran are being affected by this war?
Definitely, again, with relation to the drones, Iran has supplied Russia with a large amount of drones over the course of the Ukraine war, and Russia continues to use them on the battlefield. And likely, Russia will have to start curtailing that use and making it much more tactical and strategic in order to husband those resources. And, you know, if we can look at this war in any grander positive view, Donald Trump has taken Venezuela off the map. He has removed it from the column of the axis with Venezuela, Iran, Russia, China. Now, Iran is being moved out of the way and taken out of that framework. And so Russia is increasingly finding itself isolated and vulnerable to these links being severed. And it might eventually impact how fully they are able to conduct operations in Ukraine. And they may have to move towards limitations on combat or even open more extensive negotiations. And so there has been a sense of strategy, grand strategy that has been employed in this. And we continue to see that operationalized. But it's also a very delicate matter because I think that Russia has demonstrated a willingness now to cross borders, and it has threatened Europe. And I think that, unfortunately, the first people to suffer from a miscalculation vis-a-vis the United States and Russia will actually be Europe.
Right. Well, that was actually going to be my next question. Is this weakening Russian resolve in Ukraine?
I don't think it's weakening Russian resolve. I think Russian resolve is very hardened, but it's limiting their capabilities. And sometimes I get most concerned at that point, at the juncture of when countries have their capabilities so extensively limited. World history and world military history has demonstrated that governments get a little bit panicky and they start looking towards means that they normally would not use in any other circumstance as their options are limited. And I was actually just talking about this the other day, that one of the things which I fear most about this continuing operation, though it needs to continue, is that Iran will start contemplating using nuclear, chemical, or biological means to fight this. They've definitely used asymmetric means. You know, going towards the heart of whether this would impact Russia, I think that we would initially see some use of conventional means on a European battlefield, but if things got constrained enough, they may start using extraordinary or asymmetric means in order to accomplish their goals. But I think that we're a fair amount of distance from that point.
Well, let's hope that that point never arrives. James Bowden, thank you so much for sharing your analysis with our audience, and have a good day.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away, lots more coming up. Goodbye.